Hey everyone, and welcome to my second video reaction in this new era of my channel. I made a video a while back about quitting political commentary, but I realized that I pretty much solved my issues. My art has and is improving, and if things get toxic, I have ways to shield myself from it. I tested the waters with my Candace Owens video, and for the most part, I like it. And it seems like people like that kind of content from me. Consider this content to run alongside my animations and history videos to close the gap between uploads easily. This video is about the trans agenda, but at some point, it got into my thoughts on Andrew Tate. With that out of the way, I hope you like my reactions to social political content I find on the internet.
Okay, I don't think the trans movement is about safeguarding people's ability to express their gender. I think it was brought forth as a social issue for politicians to get behind, and now it's used as a wedge issue to weed out ideologically non-compliant people.
First things first. Yeah, on social media, I believe left-wing thoughts are more prevalent, and places like Twitter is where you see a lot of people getting attacked for expressing opposing opinions. It's a problem, and I don't think it's a controversial thing to say. However, you lose me when you imply there's some deeper conspiracy that politicians are using trans issues to silence people who disagree. Governments-wise, you see legislation being written that affects LGBT people negatively. Most get shot down, some get passed, and out of those that do get passed, are just nothing burgers. Like the recent bill that prohibits gender reassignment surgery for minors, even though hormonal replacement therapy and surgery of that nature is prohibited for those under 18. This is to say that politicians in our government are pretty split on the issue, and they aren't acting in unison to help trans people. Anyways, back to the video. The ones pressuring people to get banned are people like you and I. We're doing this to ourselves. It just so happens that companies that run social media have a left-wing slant on social issues themselves, and will ban people who are openly anti-LGBT. I don't think those who disagree with the LGBT community should get banned because I think that emboldens the real view and creates echo chambers for us. However, those who are being open bigots, calling trans people slurs, or being spiteful with no points, yeah, ban them. You're being a dick so you get what you deserve. Now to push some nuance into the video, since I'm talking about people getting banned. Recently, Andrew Tate was banned from several social media apps, and he says some reprehensible things. Did he deserve to get banned? No. Say what you want about him, but he's offering more than just some problematic statements. There's a reason why he blew up, because his messages resonated with a lot of men. Sort of like the alt-right resonating with a lot of white men because of the anti-white rhetoric from the left a while back. Now it's a much broader group, just men, period. I think us on the left need to challenge that, or at least offer alternatives that don't alienate men into joining the red pill community. I think that community can get pretty toxic depending on where you're at, but it beats the left's belittlement of men. Banning him does nothing in the grand scheme of things because that will cause the toxic members of the community to get more clever with their wording. Things will only get more abstract and begin hurting the left in ways it's starting to do now. But that's enough rambling, I got a little off track.
To that end, I think it deliberately empowers the most emotional and dogmatic people, like those going after J.K. Rowling and Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, that happened, but they aren't cancelled. J.K. Rowling is still writing books and Dave Chappelle is still doing shows. However, I know there are those who aren't as lucky, and a cancel mob can get people fired from their jobs. I can understand real acts of bigotry, such as that white woman with the dog calling the cops on a black man, claiming he's threatening her. Yeah, good, get her. She could have ruined that guy's life, or worse. But people just telling dumb surface-level jokes, or just disagreeing with someone, shouldn't get banned or fired. There are people with legit criticisms of both J.K. Rowling and Dave Chappelle, and it's not canceling if they just leave it at that. Criticism. But there are a loud minority that can take things overboard. I don't agree with those people. As I've said before, I'm all for offensive humor. I'd be lying if I said Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks doesn't crack me up. When doing offensive humor, it takes knowing the subject matter beyond surface level to pull it off. I think that's a better argument than calling Dave Chappelle transphobic. You're just preaching to your echo chamber with that.
I mean, we all know there's a distinction to be had, but many of us pretend like there's not because we've been told that there's not, and that the right thing to say is that there's no distinction.
He didn't clarify what he meant by distinction, so I'll be charitable and say he was talking about people ignoring sex differences between trans and cisgender people. I'm sure you can find people who say that there are no distinctions at all. I disagree with them, but I don't think most trans people are saying that. This doesn't mean trans people are not the gender they identify as, but the differences in sex characteristics exist. Heck, for example, a trans woman, as they get further along their transitioning, start to have less sex characteristics in common with cis men. That exists too, and I don't think that should be a controversial thing to say. The only controversial part is me making the distinction, between sex and gender. Feel free to light me up in the comments. All I can say is, don't let the loud minority cloud your perception of others.
It reminds me of Orwell's 1984, where he's being tortured and repeatedly asked how many fingers are being held up, and ultimately the right answer is whatever the state says there is. Many accept these terms because it's the path of least resistance set forth by the people who own and run the megaphones, who dictate what does and does not make a good person, as well as a loyal army of shock troops who will effectively come after you and your reputation both off and on Twitter if you step out of line. The solution always seems to be to control language and grant the ruling class more control.
Social media is not the government, bud. The social pressures on there are a problem, yes, I agree, but social media is just where it's at. Honestly, that's part of the growing pains of this technology. Social media is still new in the grand scheme of things, and technology is only going to keep evolving at a fast rate, I should add, while our genetics lag behind. Things like our tribal inclinations will bleed into social media. This is just the human condition amplified by technology. This is to say the problems we face on social media won't go away anytime soon unless we keep ourselves in check. It's easier said than done, of course, but it is doable. Anyways, I gotta go. Be nice to one another and take care of yourselves.